So growth isn't the only way to grow. Let me explain that for a second here. So a lot of times when I talk about Valve, I think a lot of people miss that Valve can do certain things that other companies can't. And they can do that because unlike other companies that decide that they want to grow, they want to become this giant company, so they hire a ton of people, they grow. And they lose ability to act and react and do things in an intelligent way. So a really easy example that's super stupid is the very first time I came back from London, I had a Valve credit card. I had some receipts. I actually had a 10-pound note because I had done something where I had used some of my money and some of their money and I want to return it. And I had kind of listed out some things and I went to go hand that in and I got torn up. And I got told, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. It was by somebody else who travels and has a credit card. And it's like, I don't ever want to have to do that myself. Don't you ever do that. We just give out credit cards to people we trust. And I was always like, and I've said this before, like they once charged $1,500 on PayPal just to cover the expense for the softball team. But like, they just didn't do that. Now, I would go out to eat with big publishers often, right? And they would love to have me be one of their people going out to eat because they were then allowed to go to nicer places. They literally, some of them had like dollar amounts they were allowed to spend, and depending on who was in there. And I remember so many times like, oh yeah, Liz Chet was in there as they're making their expense report. And so then we could go to a fancier place. Well, here's the problem then. You're always looking for the person higher up to speak to, and I'm not going to help EA or Microsoft in any, I mean, yeah, we help them, but not really, not like, what you really should be doing is you really should be going to have beers with some indie developer and buying the beers. You should be going to have lunch with someone you never heard of, but then pinged you, on, at the time Twitter, but don't go on Twitter now. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing you should be able to do. And it wasn't just me, but a whole ton of people at Valve did a lot of outreach that way because it was fun to discover somebody crazy and cool. And the first time you see something and you bring it back and you share it, you're like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. Like, people are excited. Like, we could go do that in a way other companies couldn't. And then that entrenched Valve with the indie developers of us being like, these are now our friends. We want to remove the barriers. We want to remove the walls. Like, we're going to put up Greenlight because we don't have the back end infrastructure yet to do it. I still miss Greenlight. I talked about that before. I still do. But I understand why, and it's good it's gone. But like there's this whole process about that made our company different. And it's nothing that anybody would have said like, hey, we're going to do this so that we get this result. But that's how it panned out because of our size and because of our desire not to grow. And so like in the coming years, we're going to see a lot of people talking about things that you're going to be like, wait, that's connected to that. And it's like, yeah, because it's all that unintended consequences. You may have heard that one. But it's like, that is all connected in weird ways. And I think people like for the Valve thing, just like, well, how come I going to have lunch with Gabe one day and he says, oh, go work on Left 4 Dead, right? It's because we're a tiny company. And, there's that thing of like, you can only know 120 people. So when I started, there was 75 people. And I knew, and this is true. I can remember, I knew everyone's name, their family, like everything about them up to about 120. And then I lost. And then eventually I started introducing myself to people's parents because I thought they were new hires. Like I always tried to introduce myself when I saw somebody new. And I eventually stopped doing that because I introduced myself to so many parents and that was awkward and weird. It's really weird. It's really weird when I'm older than one of the parents of somebody who works at Valve. Yeah. But just kept doing it. But that's why you see a lot of stuff happening that comes out of Valve, even though they're tiny. They can do some things very quickly because people have that. They have that sense of like ownership and that sense of like, hey, I can act because I'm acting not just for the company, but for myself. Where everybody at those big publishers are just acting for themselves and the company just happened to be in the background. They were trying to bilk them. And those people weren't bad for putting me on the name or only having dinner with me. They were presented a system and they played the system the way they should, right? They played it to optimize for them. And so people always optimize the system for them. And like the optimization was like you found cool indies and you brought them back and people like them, right? Like the first time I'm showing people Fantastic Contraption back at Valve, and I had gone to a real little indie game jam up in Canada, and then I had to play that on stage. Man, don't ever make people do puzzles. Oh my God, doing puzzles on stage in front of people is just terrifying. Don't ever make people do that. But I did that and I solved them. But right, that was like a cool thing to bring back, and people are excited. And we eventually made their game part of the launch of the Vive, right? And so we wanted to find that, and so we were incentivized to find that. So we spent a lot of time interacting with a lot of devs, knowing a lot of it was just going to be meeting people and having a nice time with a nice person, right? And nothing more would come of it. But that was okay. Where all those other places had optimized for something else. So, right, it's a lot of why Valve works rains down from that, and a lot of why it doesn't work rains down from that of like, it takes longer to make things because it's a smaller company. So get off their back.